intro, the new intro for season 2 ends faster than the intro for season 1 did. Welcome to 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin. I am Jason. That's Kevin. We are also joined this week, because we're just a week away from the draft, by Parker Blake, right down below us. We are brought to you by CincyJungle.com, SB Nation, Cincinnati Bengals website. We are on the Orange and Black Insider. Check us out. There's a lot of great shows there. And we are sponsored by Eastgate Smiles Dental Care. Kevin, Parker, how's everybody doing?
I'm great, man.
Good.
I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Our kind of our resident offensive line expert here. You came on last year and we talked some offensive line. Before we get into the draft, Kevin, if you don't mind, I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are before we get to the draft. I know that's next week, but how do you feel about the Trent Brown signing at right tackle to go along with Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he can do. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Always rooting for a full 17-game season out of him. I think they have very similar play styles, which is why I kind of like the signing. Just because I think it's easier to work around guys when you work around the same type of guy on both sides, not opposing play styles like they've had in the past. So I think it'll be fun to see what they can do. Obviously, he's a mauler in the run game. I worry about his interior redirection ability, but he's great at running guys around the hoop and pass protection, so it should be fun.
All right.
Brown County.
There you go, Brown County. Yeah, that's what Orlando Brown Jr. said. So, Kevin, I think that
do we all like Brown County? I was hurt. They kept calling them the Broughtons, and I really liked that. Brown County,
If
I've never heard the Broughtons, but I love that.
I haven't heard Broughtons
I've
either.
heard it from a few people. Maybe it's not as popular as I thought it was. I thought that.
Yeah, I like that more than Brown County. I do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I do.
For sure.
So, and if Hamilton, if like the Cincinnati Bengals played in Brown County, be different. I think Brown County's in Indiana. Either way, I don't know. Doesn't matter. So Kevin, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. We're gonna move on to, we kind of advertise this as looking at rounds 2 and 3 in case the Bengals pick Bowers, Murphy, Newton. A lot of draft crushes out there. A couple of them might be available, and the Bengals might take them. That's what Trent Brown buys us. So we're going to jump into that in just a second. I do want to just touch on the first round because it is the thing most people do care about. And Parker Blake, who is your guy you hope will be there? Like, some people go Mims, some people it's Latham. Who's your guy in the first round that you think might realistically be there that you would want to take?
Yeah, I've been a Johnny Newton guy through the whole process. I've been a Johnny Newton guy since I started doing mocks. Whenever he's there, it's like an auto pick for me at this point. Try to mix it up, obviously, but whenever I'm doing like a, what do I think they should do or what do I think they will do, it's always him. I know the league's higher on Murphy. I don't know why Newton's been sliding so much though. I think the film's better. I think the profile's better. So I'm Johnny Newton all the way. That's my guy.
Okay. All right. So
yeah, I wonder if it really is just he didn't test when we expected him to, and since that moment, he's done nothing to like kick his popularity back up. I've seen ones where he slides all the way to the second round, which would be insane. Yeah. I'm not counting on that, but damn, those are really, really fun to think about.
Wow. So let's say that Newton and Murphy and Bowers are gone, and the Bengals are looking down the barrel. There are 2 or 3 offensive tackles. I feel like that'd be the way to go unless there's a real, great corner available. But let's say they're kind of pigeonholed based on the who was drafted ahead of them into taking an offensive tackle in the first round. Is there a guy that you would prefer an offensive tackle? I mean, obviously Joe Alt's going to be gone, but is there a guy that if 18, if offensive tackle is the move, is there a guy that you want them to go after?
I talked about it a little bit where I just don't love a lot of the kind of those guys in that second or third bucket, depending on if you have Joe Alt in the zone tier or not. But kind of that next group of guys, I think the best value for that is really like kind of that early 20s, mid 20s. And so that's where if you really want that offensive lineman, I mean, obviously go get him. But just value wise, I'd rather trade back, maybe grab an extra day 2 pick, and then also grab your tackle. But I mean, I've been on Guyton for a while. I know he's kind of a polarizing figure on Bengals social media, but I like Tyler Guyton. I also think, Roger Rosengarten, who I'll probably talk about a little later, has been sliding up boards too. But I think that second group has really grown a lot. And I think the ceiling for it is kind of like that 20, 22, 23 range is where that kind of kicks off. And then they're all probably gone by 40. So
Jason's power just went out. Hopefully he's going to join us shortly, but I'm going to take control from here on out. This has been, you guys have not been here. The whole beginning of this has been a absolute nightmare for everyone involved, but we're going to keep on moving. I am not a big Tyler Guyton fan, not the way you are, but if we're talking a trade back scenario, I'm 100%. That is what Trent Brown bought this team, is the ability to take risks and everything else. But like we said, let's move on to round 2. Let's say we got Newton, dream scenario. Everybody's happy. No one's fighting about it online. No one would ever do that on Bengals Twitter.
never.
No, never. You're on the clock at 49. You look up. Who do you want to be there? Who is your pick at 49 for tackle?
Well, I mean, at 49, like I said, I hope Rosengarten's there. His stocks jumped a lot, especially recently. We'll see where he actually ends up landing. But for a long time, I had him kind of in that mid to late second round group. I definitely would have grabbed him earlier in the second round, but I think, right around that 50 spot is the perfect spot for him. But again, if he's rising, he's rising. You can't really stop that. I've heard a lot of hype on Blake Fisher. I was actually extremely high on him early in the process out of Notre Dame, kind of the little brother to Joe Alt on the right side. And I'm still a big fan of him. I think he's kind of getting a little overhyped at this point in the process, but I wouldn't be mad about him at 49 either.
Okay. And so you think he's getting overhyped? Because here's the thing. I feel like more than almost any other time, as far as like the trenches are concerned, the disagreement here is wild. Nobody agrees on a single. Joe Halt's number 1. And after that, nobody agrees, because I've seen Rosengarten ranked in the 40s. I've seen him ranked down at like 100. So why, in your opinion, is Rosengarten your guy at 49? What does he bring more than other people?
Yeah, no, it's funny enough because I did a mock this morning and he got taken at 32 to the Chiefs, and I was like, oh wow, that'd be something. But I think he's a much more technically refined prospect that people give him credit for, and he's got the size, he has the length, he has the athleticism. Like I feel like he checks all the boxes. But then again, it's Jared and I talked about it. Direct guy Jared and I talked about it a while ago, but it's the whole little brother syndrome, right? Where you got Rosengarten's opposite of Fautanu, who's the kind of the bigger name tackle on
Sure.
Washington. And so it's kind of like, oh, well, this guy's really high. This guy we'll slide him in, way below him, just because obviously they're not going to be the same level, which I don't think is always true. And so I think he kind of got just underrated. And then I even talked about at the end of the college football season where I thought Rosengarten honestly should go back. I thought he could have put together a better final year of college football and then come out, been a higher rated prospect and really had a good process. But he ended up coming out this year, which I'm not bad about because that means he's going to slip. But I just think he checks all the boxes for me. I wish he was a better people mover in the run game. That's really the only major deficiency I see in his game. I think he could really come in and maybe not on the Bengals per se, just because of who the pieces they have in place, but he could compete for a job on a number of teams day one. And so I think he'd be a great guy to have come in, learn the system for a year. After Trent Brown's gone next year, just slide him right in and just keep on trucking. So I just think he's really well put together. He checks all the boxes for me.
Do you think year one he would be capable of competing at guard? I have not looked at the later tackles nearly enough. Do you feel like he has any capacity to do that?
I mean, a lot of these guys can. He's kind of on the border of what I consider like the tackles should not transition to guard line as far as like just height, just because of the leverage battle that you get into in there. And I haven't seen him play a lot of guard. He's more of just kind of that outside guy. I think he'd be a really good swing tackle. I just don't see him bumping inside. I don't see him really having the skill set. Like I said, he's got a solid anchor, but that's from width. I don't know how he would hold up on the inside as in pass protection. Then I talked about how he's not a great people mover in the run game. So just kind of those two things. I'm like, I'll leave you outside. You do good as a tackle. You do good in space. You do good in your sets. You do good at the second level. Let's just kind of leave you out on the outside.
Yeah, and that'd be absolutely fine with me, especially for a second round pick. I have no need for a second round pick to get starter snaps year one, but the fact that you think that he'd be capable of taking starter snaps, at least if not right away, then relatively soon. It's Trent Brown. I'm a big fan of his signing, But let's be honest, we have to be prepared for somebody to step in that is not Jackson Carman. So that would be great. Is there any other than that? How about guards in the second round? Do you have any guards that you're looking at, or center that you're looking at in the second round that you think would be interesting for this team?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I've talked about for a while now. It feels like how Zach Frazier's my guy. Zach Frazier, center out of West Virginia. He's just everything I love in a prospect, especially a center prospect. I wish he would stay a little more square, be a little more patient and pass pro. But outside of that, he's a mauler, has a great wrestling background in high school, and just has a motor that doesn't stop. And he's got great displacement ability. He's got good balance at the second level. Just another guy that I feel like checks every box, as well as the mental box where he's that finisher. He's willing to get after guys. He has a motor that just doesn't, again, like I said, just doesn't stop. He just keeps going through the echo of the whistle's echo, And so he's been a guy I've been high on for a long time. And like I've talked about, he's one of my guys. One of my hot takes for the draft season is that he's worthy of a first round pick. Just a big fan of Frazier. I'd say a lot of the same things about Christian Haynes, that guard out of UConn. He's a little undersized. Frazier's a little smaller too, little lighter. But they're just both guys that just don't stop. They just have that mentality of just finishing every single play. They have high level athleticism, and they have good strength in the run game. It's kind of like, again, just checking all the boxes. Just when you're doing that pre-check, just going through, and he can do this, he can do this, he can do this, and it's it's hard to say no to those guys.
Oh sure, Zach Frazier has ruined many mock drafts of mine. Because I'll go in with like a strat. Well, I'll go with a plan. Like, let's see what would happen if we developed it this way or that way or that way. And about 1 out of 5, he seems to be there.
He pops
in
up
the second
there,
round. And then it just, I take him, whatever my original strategy going in, it's out the window. I have to see where this goes. And that's the way you hurt your own feelings. I feel like mock drafts are just setting yourself up. You're just hurting your own feelings in the future. Where you're like, what? Well, this is what it could have been. We could have had Zach Frazier in the second round. And he goes at like 33 because he's a talent. It is what it is. But yeah, damn, I would love to get him in the second. I would not mind double dipping offensive tackle and then Zach Frazier. I think we would not regret it for years to come.
You got Trent Brown. You got Trent Brown on the 1 year. You got Karras on the 1 year, and then you got Kappa coming up. So I mean, addressing both this year isn't out of the realm of possibility in my mind. I think
and it might actually be the better option because there's a real world in which we double dip on the O line to this year and next year in the draft, and are better for it in almost every way. All right, let's move on to the third, and this is where I feel like it gets very, very dicey. Do you think in the third round, in your opinion, there's not a single year one starter, correct? At this point, we're just talking development.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the third round guys are going to they might have that starter ceiling and they could get to it early, but everybody you're taking in the third round is lucky that they have 2 picks. I feel like it's just kind of I like that guy because of, this reason, or this guy has that one trait that I hope that we can maximize type players.
Well, then who would still be who, in your opinion, third round, who's got the highest ceiling? Who are we grabbing with the hopes that they become our right tackle in 2025?
Yeah, and that's where this tackle class is like concerning, right? Because I feel like there's that big gap in like the middle of it where you have like this like top 40, top 50 talent, and then you have a lot of guys where it's like, oh, on day 3, I'll take a swing on this guy, I'll take a swing on that guy. But then you have like that middle of it where from like 50 to the end of day 3, where it's like, I don't really know what's going on in there. And that's where I have guys a little higher, kind of like Delmar Glaze out of Maryland is a guy I really like because I think he has guard tackle flexibility, and then he's just a high-end athlete that still has strong hands and a strong anchor. Sure. I like what he can put together on film. I think he's a little light. I think he can be really inconsistent at times. Like if he gets cold, then it's hard for him to heat back up again. And these are all the reasons that he's falling into the third round. But he's a guy that I think you can work with. And so I think he'd be my favorite guy day 3. I'm sure a lot of people have him a lot lower. I'm just really high on him. And then I think kind of a more common name that people see pop up is Javon Foster for me out of Missouri. He's kind of the opposite, where he's a very consistent player. I worry about his anchor a little bit more. He's got good pop in his hands, good in the run game. I think he's a little leaner too. I think it's funny because this tackle class has like some of these massive freaks, and then it has some of these guys where it's like, you look like a guard, but you play tackle well. So I mean, you're kind of again dealing with a lot of those things, and then just kind of the third name I'd mention, just since it's kind of that weird middle ground, is Caden Wallace, who was the right tackle on Penn State opposite of Olu. He's well-rounded, but just not at a good level. Like he's solid at a lot of things, but he doesn't really do anything well. And so again, those are kind of like the tackles that I'd look at in that range. But yeah, they all have their lumps.
Okay. And what about guard? Let's say the Bengals have drafted their tackle of the future in round 1. Round 2, they went wherever they went. They went wide receiver, they went D tackle, a variety of options there. But now we're doubling back. We want a guard, we want a center. We're going to double dip on the O line this year. Is there any day one starters, or at least somebody who can give Volson, for example, a run for his money, and a little competition on day 3 that you'd be excited for the Bengals to pick?
Yeah, I think the best part of this interior O line group really comes in on that third, like the end of the second through middle of day 3. I feel like there's a lot of guys you can take there that, yeah, they might not be a perfect prospect, but it's kind of easier things to correct, easier things to clean up, and then just kind of let them get in and compete. You got guys like Dominic Pooney, who's he played tackle, but the NFL seems to like him as a guard center, and I like him as a guard center. I was really glad to see him getting those center reps in Mobile. Yeah, again, out of Kansas, just again, really solid player, really good base. I know Duke's working with him. He's talked really highly about him, Duke Manyweather. Brandon Coleman at TCU, another guy that played tackle, kind of bumped back into guard in the middle of the season last year. I think that's his more natural spot. I've heard that he can play some center too. But I feel like a lot of these guys kind of in this middle range have that center guard flexibility, whether they're a traditional guard or traditional center, because then you have guys like Tanner Bortolini, you have guys like what's his name? I remember. Bo Limmer out of Arkansas. But again, another group of guys where I just feel like I love all of them. I love what they can do. I love their ceiling. And I think those are 4 guys that could come in day one and really push for at least that O-line 6, O-line 7 spot.
Sure. I was joking about how Fisher. I was joking about how Frazier ruined many of mock drafts. Pooney's the opposite. He has saved many a mock draft where I'm sitting in round 3 and I'm just not happy with where I'm at. And there's his name. And I go, all right, okay, we can ride this out. Maybe we can end up doing something, because I love his flexibility. I think that he could end up slotting into a variety of spots. I don't hate the idea of him competing with Volson. I don't hate the idea of Volson winning and then him competing for that other guard spot for the following year. I think his versatility really almost guarantees to me that he finds a starting role on the team by 2025. I very, very much hope he gets selected in round 3. What about you, Jason, now that you're back with us?
Yeah, no, sorry about that.
We're talking Pooney. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm coming in on the conversation way late, completely out of context, so I'm just going to start a new one, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
So I know you guys are in day 3 now, right? Day 3 offensive lineman prospects. I specifically wanted to ask you about Giovanni Manu, and the reason I want to ask you about him is because I just learned about him. He's out of British Columbia. He's, from what I understand, a freak athlete for his size. And do you think that he can? I know he's an ex-basketball player, but do you think he can progress and play well, maybe at like a starting level in the NFL?
Yeah, he just came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
British Columbia, right? Yeah, he's just popped up on the scene, testing in some look like a high school gym.
Oh, I know.
I did have concerns with his athletic profile. I didn't love his 3-cone. I didn't love his 10-yard, and those are kind of the two statistics or measurables as far as athletic testing goes that I look at initially, especially on these guys I don't really know much about. I was like, oh well, how do you look coming out of there? And I know he jumped well. I know he's got good size, but I do wonder about those just 2 aspects, because that's usually what can kind of give you a tell of like, oh, this guy does have that, higher potential opposed to this guy's going to be a little bit of a project. But we've seen guys, come out with lesser athletic profiles and pan out. And I mean, he's got good size and he seemed to jump well. He seems to move well. When you watch, I like scoured the interverse, the webverse, and I found some clips of him and it's fun to watch. But yeah, I don't know what that ceiling would be. I
Right.
absolutely don't know what the floor would be, but I feel like he's a guy, round 6, like I've seen a lot of
Right.
people talking about, just take that shot if you like him, or
Yeah.
he interviewed well, you like what you heard about him, just take the
Yep.
shot. Nothing wrong with it.
I think that he's a little bit like Andre Yosevich in that way, and not the fact that he's a wide receiver or anything like that, but he's from a school. I mean, we don't see many football players come out of Princeton like Yosevich did. You know what I mean? But he's got the measurables. You know what I mean? He's got, and like you said, he didn't have the great some of the drills you were talking about, but just his size. You know what I mean? Obviously, he's an
Yeah,
athlete. One of those guys in the 6th round. You got an extra sixth round pick. Nothing wrong with it. You know, if he doesn't work
true.
out, most 6th round picks don't work out.
Yeah, no
You know what
skin
I
off
mean?
your back, right? Just if
Yeah,
you
it
like the
doesn't
guy,
matter.
take the shot
Yeah,
for
it doesn't
sure.
matter, especially at that point. Now, if you're saying, "Hey, you know what? We really like this Giovanni Manu guy in the 2nd round," don't do that. Don't do that. But sixth
Definitely don't
round,
do that.
whatever. Kevin, you got anybody else? Who's some other guys?
As far as that, my own personal preferences, no, I don't. Other than I would like to swing back around to Tyler Guyton at the end and have you defend him because you're one of the only people I know who is high on him. But before we did touch on this, I just want your opinion on it. Is I've heard many times the 3 cone is like the cheat code as far as linemen are concerned. Do you subscribe to that? That without a good 3 cone, you're just not that interested in them, at least not on the higher end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big film guy, right? So I'll get into the film way before you ever test. And if the film
Okay.
looks good, I'm usually sold anyway. And then the testing either confirms it or makes me go back and rewatch the film and see what I missed. But the 3 cone's one of those things where, as testing rolls out, I'm kind of wrapping stuff up. And so if I see people pop, in that category or just be really low, or again, if I have questions, like that's where my big thing with JC Latham, I'm like, I want to see him test. I didn't really care about his 40. I wanted to see him run the 3 cone. Like, hey, how do you look? Because I mean, that's just the way the drill's built. It's how do you move, and it's when I'm looking for that redirection ability or the balance stuff, and that's where it's kind of the cheat code because it shows you how well a guy A can handle himself in space and B can kind of work, driving off of both feet. Just as far as redirecting goes. And so I wouldn't consider it necessarily a cheat code, but if you're just getting in a little late or you're kind of just you're a later, in season draft guy where it's like, oh, it's the month of the draft, I'll start looking at guys. Then definitely as you're going through O lineman, look at that 3 cone and you'll see a lot of stuff line up, and then you'll find a lot of fun little project guys that maybe might turn into journeymen or just those offensive line 6-7 type guys, and it's all because they
Sure.
have that 3 cone, and that's usually what shows that versatility. And I always say it's what sets the ceiling. If you have a good 3 cone, you have solid film, you're gonna have a pretty high ceiling, and then obviously vice versa.
Okay. Yeah, that makes absolute sense to me. I just wanted your take on it because I've just heard that multiple times. For some reason, I do feel like every draft season, people pick up on just little tidbits or little whatever. And the 3 cone being the cheat code for O linemen, I've just heard it from every
Yeah,
source in the world this year. So I just wanted your take on it. For the final segment, I don't even know if we're calling it a segment. I do want your take on Tyler Guyton. He is the one of the most divisive prospects I've seen where some people, not many, but some people, including you, want him in the first. They are actively pro Guyton. And there are other people who wouldn't even take him in the second. And that is a wild disparity. Like, personally, I like Mims better than I probably should because they all have got holes. And I am just going to get the biggest, fastest, strongest guy. And I'm going to trust that he can learn the position just because he has all the tools to learn it well. You might not agree with that, but you're going to agree that like Mims deserves conversation in that area.
for sure.
Guyton, nobody agrees on anything. What do you like about Guyton? Why is he your guy?
Yeah,
Or
no,
one of your
so it's
guys?
like, yeah, and it's funny because it's like I can't try to make it very clear. Like when I was posting about it and like getting into conversations, I'm like, I'm not saying this is like a top 5 tackle in the class type guy. I'm just saying, like, I think the conversation that really spurred it on and made me get out there is I saw a lot of people that like loved Latham that hated Guyton. That always just
Okay.
made me giggle because if you look at him just on paper and like you were just picking based off, you didn't know either name, you didn't know what school, you just looked at numbers and stats and measurables and all the on paper stuff. Everyone's gonna pick Guyton 10 times out of 10. And
Okay.
so the only thing they had an issue with was, oh, he's an older prospect. But if you look at just the two of them next to each other, they both have bad hands. They both play with wide hands. They have that extra length. And they try to use it to their advantage. And it's like, okay, so they're kind of even there. Well, we'll say they have bad hands. We'll move on. And then if you look at their feet, right? Latham, I think, has concrete feet. He doesn't move his feet well. He doesn't redirect well back inside against, inside moves late. Or I feel like, he's got the grip strength that I don't think Guyton has. Like, and he can stop guys in place, which I don't think Guyton has that type of power. But when you look at the feet and the athleticism, Guyton beats him 10 times out of 10. And so you can get Guyton out in space. He can redirect better. So, yeah, he might not have that crazy anchor, but if he gets that inside counter, he's able to just wash it across the line or even just get his body back in front of it. He's able to get to the second level in the run game and, really square up with linebackers and work leverage. He really is really, really smart about the leverage battle. I just think, Latham being a good run blocker is great at the first level, but I think once he gets to the second level, he kind of gets a little hand heavy. He really he leans on that power a lot, whereas Guyton leans on his athleticism. And there's one of those that personally I lean towards as far as if I have guys pretty even, I'm going to pick one over the other every single time. And then I think the final argument that I always saw was, what about the true pass sets? Guyton's got 0 true pass sets because they do this, that, and the other. And Latham's got all these true pass sets. And, I've never really subscribed to that whole conversation. I think it's good for context. And if you're split on guys, it's like, oh man, they're right with the same. Like, how do I separate these? It's a good, measurable to use. But I think that's just a product of the Oklahoma, offense and how they run things down there. But if you look at all the talent that's come out of Oklahoma, I don't think having a lot of play action and RPOs hurt those guys. They seem to be doing fine as far as I can tell. So that's kind of where the whole conversation started. And that's how I became like, a Guyton guy. It's just because I said I do like him better than Latham. But I don't have them, crazy far apart. I do think he'd be, again, worth a swing in the first round just because I think he has that high ceiling. But what I like most about his game is I think he's got a really solid, really high floor where he can come in. And again, in the Trent Brown situation, if you need him to play, 6 to 8 games in a year, I feel like he can be a very serviceable tackle for 6 to 8 games right out the gate. And then you can just develop it moving forward. And that's why I'm a big fan of him. I have a lot more questions about Latham. I think Latham also has a really good floor, but I have Guyton's ceiling higher. And that's kind of where I made that decision.
Okay.
Right,
I'm going to take another look at Guyton. This is I'm going to ask you 1 or 2 more questions about this. Well, it's just that it's an interesting take. I respect your opinion, so I want to hear this because. So, would you take Guyton at 18? Do you think he's a value at 18, or are you talking more about a situation where, like you said earlier, a trade back situation? We trade back into the mid to late 20s, maybe get another day 3 pick, another day 2 pick. And Guyton is there. Is that more what you're talking about as far as Guyton's concerned, or do you think he'd be worth it at 18?
See, this is where like the Bengals draft position kills me because I think he goes before 49. I think he's a top 40 guy, but I would probably take him at 18. Like if the tackle's like there was an early tackle run, like you're getting tackled like 5, 6, 10, like early, and like they're just starting to fly. Like I don't know what's going to even be there at 40, let alone 49. Then maybe I'm like looking at him at 18, and if the board falls, and I don't have I don't have the Newton, I don't have the Murphy, I don't have the Bowers, I don't the Brian Thomas Jr., what Quinyon Mitchell, whoever you want to slot in there, that top group of guys, if they're not there, and it'd be a spot where you'd probably consider trading back, I would just rather take Guyton, just because I think he's kind of for me, he's the tweener where I was back and forth. Is he in that first group or is he in that second group? So I'd probably have him near the top of that second tier. And if you're in, that 18 spot, and it's just kind of a weird spot, nothing really fell your way, I wouldn't consider it a crazy reach, maybe a few spot reach, but it's going to be more work to trade back 4 or 5 spots than it is to just take him at 18. So I would consider it for sure, but the board would have to fall a certain way.
Right. I do have
this is follow up.
Do you have another Guyton one?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to ask, so if you look at the offensive line when it comes to contracts, you got Trent Brown for 1 year. You got Alex Kappa, I think, for 24 and 25.
Yep.
Karras for 24. I think we got 2 more years with or
Olsen
1 more
and
year.
Kappa should be the same.
Yeah. And then Orlando Brown Jr. will be here for a couple more years. So in your opinion, you have this draft, you have 10 picks, it's a big offensive line draft. I mean, is that your focus if you're in charge of the Bengals? Hey, we have to hit home runs in the trenches because we're going to be going through this crew change out soon. You know what I mean? Where you're going to have
For sure.
a new center, new right guard, new right tackle, and then we'll see. I mean, you could see a situation where Orlando Brown Jr. is the only guy left. You know what I mean? Like Jonah Williams was the only guy for a little while. I mean, how important do you think this draft is for the future of the offensive line?
Yeah, so I actually did a fun experiment today where I just pulled the full 53, or I think it was like 69 man roster, and I trimmed it down to, what I consider like locks for making the team this year, opposed to guys I have on the fence, and then guys I have I just cut them out as far as practice squad or cuts, kind of those fringe guys. And I got to where I had 48 guys on the roster, including specialists. But I had 8 guys that I was kind of like, I'm probably looking to replace this guy or upgrade this position in the draft. And when it came down to it, when I went into the draft, I did a whole mock after doing that experiment to see, how can I address this? How does it fall? And I wanted to get a tackle. I wanted to replace Jackson Carman and prepare for Trent Brown to be gone. I got an interior offensive lineman. I want to replace Trey Hill and prepare for Ted Karras to be gone. Okay. And then I got 2 interior defensive linemen. And I've talked a lot since even the offseason started about how I think the Bengals really need to almost not necessarily force it, but kind of expedite the turnover in both the offensive and defensive line rooms. Because I just think the depth there is just not good enough, just in general. And then the guys you have as your starters, all their contracts are coming up. I mean, look at the contracts of your defensive ends. The defensive tackle this room was a disaster just coming into the offseason as far as contracts even – you had no one there.
Right.
And the same thing as far as the offensive line goes. You have, plenty of depth guys, but do you want them in the room as far as, your backups are your top 8? And then you got to look at, like we talked about, Trent Brown's gone next year. Ted Karras is gone next year. So that's already 2 immediate needs that you just got to address. So I would say, come out of this with 2 offensive linemen. I wouldn't say necessarily 2 defensive linemen as much as 2 defensive interior players. So
okay, I got you.
I guess, to answer your question, yes, I would prioritize it because it's 4 out of 10. So.
Right. Okay. All right.
I 100% agree with that. It's not an exciting way to put it because I actually think D-line play is some of my favorite to watch. But I've been referring to this as it's a vegetables draft. Sometimes you got to eat your vegetables, man.
Yeah.
It can't be all flash. It can't be all wide receivers and cornerbacks and quarterbacks.
Can't have pop rocks for you. That's what you say to your kids. Can't have pop rocks for dinner, Brock. You can't have pop rocks for dinner.
A healthy team starts from the core, man.
Yep.
And sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and go, you know what? It ain't going to be flashy. It ain't going to be fun for some of our fan base, but I'm walking out of this thing with at least 4 linemen, maybe 5. And I promise you will all thank me for it 2 years from now when we have a Super Bowl. If you can get a cheap O-line, a cheap talented O-line, and a cheap talented D-line, there's nothing else you can't do because you can buy the rest. But the Bengals have proven for the last couple of years, it's really hard to buy a good O-line. It just is. It's expensive. It's hard to bring them all together. But if they manage to nail this draft,
great offensive linemen go.
Yeah, no, that's the thing in the league. You look around the entire league, you have a bunch of guys that you've either drafted a bunch of really good guys that you've been able to develop and now you're keeping, and now with, especially offensive line being a much harder position to find across the board, all 5 spots. Once you get a guy that's nice and young, you're able to develop, you're keeping that guy for as long as you can, as long as you're willing to. For some of these guys, you see some young guys pop on the market just because they're too expensive, or maybe they drafted too many guys. They have to you got to haze a little bit of guys out of there. But for the most part, offensive linemen stay, whether they're good or bad. And the guys you're paying, usually you're paying for a reason if they're on the market. So if you can get into there and be one of these teams that can get their own, developmental guys and move up through the process and, start slotting them in over time, that's the way to do it. That way you can pay, these bigger contracts to your premium positions and all these other, your auxiliary positions you don't want to be sinking money into. That's where you got to attack those in the draft. So.
Yep. Championship teams are built in the trenches. That's how
your offensive line is almost half of your offense, 5 out of 11. So lock it up.
Yep. And it's like you said, it's a great term. Eat your vegetables, Bengals. Eat your vegetables. Eat your vegetables. Kevin, you got anything else for Parker?
No, I think that's we're about wrapping it up here. I just wanted to thank you again for coming on. I always like your insight. There's a couple names here that I know very little about, and that's going to become the rest of my evening is looking them up, watching a little tape on them if I can find them. I just love this time of year. Everybody sees it as the start of the season. To me, it's the end of the season. You play the season out, you figure out where your holes are, and then you spend the next couple of months figuring out, like, okay, well, how do we fix it? And then the draft is over, and now the season's over. I don't know why, but that's just the way I've always viewed it. Is this is just the maintenance period at the end of a successful or unsuccessful season. But that's it. Just excited. Grateful to have you on. We depending on if the Bengals do the right thing or not, I'd love to have you back on here in a few weeks and get your opinion on whoever they did select. We'll go a little more in depth into them.
Yeah,
for sure.
And
Yeah,
then-
no. Sorry,
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks, and obviously, you know, as you watch these guys, definitely hit me up and let me know how wrong
Absolutely.
I am. I definitely want to hear opinions. I love hearing opinions. I just, you know, I feel like I spew so much out into the internet. You know, I gotta get some backlash every now and then. So let me know how much you hate Nighton after tonight. You know, I want you to go back and rewatch them. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. I'm definitely more than happy to come back on anytime.
Absolutely.
Talk ball.
Why don't you tell everybody where we can see your stuff at, man?
Yeah, no. So everything I do, I'll always post on Twitter, just because that's where I try and keep everything for my sake, so I can go back and find it. So at Parker Blake 60, that's where you can find me for literally everything. I write for a couple different sites. I'm trying to do some of my own stuff, auxiliary too. So I got a lot going on, but it'll all be there. So just go there, you can find it. If not, my DMs are always open. Hit me up if you have any questions. You want to just talk ball? That's what I'm here for.
Good deal. Well, hey, thank you very much. Again, we are brought to you by CincyJungle.com, SB Nation, Cincinnati Bengals website. We are sponsored by Eastgate Smiles Dental Care. And we'll be back, Kevin. I'll be back next week for a Wednesday night for the draft and Who Day.
Who Dey?
Okay.